Who am I? I'm a blend. In a transition, but I'm a blend of a lot of things right now.
What's up, world, and welcome to another episode of the Super Investor Show. Now, on this show, if it's your first time, what we do is we bring a super investor on so I can reveal the true identity, so you can realize that, believe it or not, they're only human. And on today's show, we have not just an investor, we have an athlete. Unbiased, he was, and I'm going to say still is, one of the best triple jumpers in Britain, and if not the world. We'll talk more about that in just a moment. But his career has moved on since then, which is going to relate to a lot of people who have left sports and want to know what's next, because he's also an entrepreneur and finally a visionary. So please give us a warm, sandy welcome to Mike. Michael, welcome on the show, man.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure, King. My pleasure. Now, last week we did a show at 10:30. We're setting records now in the UK. We're creeping up to midnight, but like you said, your mind is most active. So, for people at home, who is Michael?
Oh gosh, what a question. I think I'm kind of asking myself that question right now because I'm in a very weird transitional period in my life where I've spent the last now on 20 years in predominantly in the sporting world, particularly athletics, where I've enjoyed a really, really healthy career. But as always, things change, and there comes a time in your life where even your biggest passions may start to change into other things. And I found myself, where I've spent at least the last kind of 10 years in a more professional environment with my athletics, really challenging and pushing my body to the limits. And now I've just found that my brain is saying, "Hey, what about me?" And a lot of kind of ideas that I've always had to put into the kind of the back of my mind and say for later. Later is now starting to become more like a okay, maybe now. So I've started to pursue kind of the I think my more natural space is definitely being a visionary. I'm somebody who has a lot of ideas, and now I've just taken a step towards saying, okay, well let's get some of those ideas out of that little blue book that I've had for a long time and see if some of them can come to life, and they are. So who am I? I'm a blend. In a transition, but I'm a blend of a lot of things right now.
I love the honesty because whether people believe it or not, I'm philosophical, and people at home probably do if they've seen this before. And I generally believe that we're not the same person when we wake up in the morning. And what I mean by that is not that your personality has changed so obtusely that you're aware to it, but more so that you forget things. Like naturally throughout life, you forget things, and it's a healthy process. And because you forget certain things, your beliefs, your values, the way you act, you don't even know you're acting out of character because all you know is what you remember right now. And that's the scary thing about dementia, other forms of Alzheimer's. But
Mm.
keeping on a positive note, it's impossible to not notice the t-shirt. I am a mainstream anime fan, but I haven't seen One Piece. Tell us,
Okay.
Michael, what got you into anime? And secondly, actually, yeah, we'll go with the first part. What motivated you regarding anime?
Dragon Ball Z. It all started with Dragon Ball Z. I mean, I was always a kid that was into cartoons, but one day this cartoon said, "Hold on a second, this is different." And I think immediately I just resonated, as I have done ever since, and definitely kind of went hand in hand with my athletics career in just the narrative of somebody who has a desire to do good in the world, but also that good comes from a place of really pushing the limits of their physical capabilities for the people around them that they love, the people around them that they want to support. And I guess that I was first just enamored by the dynamic fight scenes, the powers. I've always been someone who's into kind of superheroes and powers and everything kind of supernatural. But then there was also this element of, the ways that the main characters who are always usually the purest of heart, go through these real adversities physically, mentally, psychologically, emotionally, but they
Mm,
always come out on top.
yeah.
You know that that character is going to find a way to ascend to the next level. And then when people started turning Super Saiyan and things like that, I said, no way. Where is my blonde hair? How do I get this? And it just channeled into my persona as an athlete, as a character in life, actually. And I just got so into it that,
Mm,
powering up, powering down, managing your energy, scouters, seeing other people's power and potential is something that just became something that came naturally to me. And I think that's the other thing that I don't talk about a lot, but I think another gift that I have is I see the potential in people. I see a lot of potential in people. And I always say to myself, ooh, if I had your skill set, do you know what I'd be doing with it? So if I could do it, you must be able to do it because this is your natural gift.
yeah.
And so I've always been somebody who, looks at other people fulfilling their potential, and it just comes to the same thing, power levels and ascending. And so it was just a natural progression for me into the other animes too.
Man, some of the things you were saying, I didn't realize I thought, but I do hold true as well, right? And main reason why, I started the show, titled it Super Investor Show, was my superpower, which no one's asked me yet because I don't allow that. But my superpower, which I believe is bringing the best out of anyone, right? Being a chameleon, whether that be in a one-to-one setting or in an interview setting, which at the end of the day, we're just having a conversation. And the thing you mentioned just there was the ability to turn it on and off, and the importance of managing your energy. So,
Mm.
so thank you for sharing that key takeaway already. Um, so we're going to hop into your superpower, and I'm sure we'll pull out some more anime references in just a second. So, Michael, the main question on this show, which I love to ask guests, is what is your superpower as a super investor?
Oh, I think ultimately, it would be the same as my answer for anything, and my superpower is perseverance. I suppose loosely attached to that is resilience, but I'd say the main thing is perseverance. And I think again that just comes from my life as an athlete, where you're always going to have setbacks. You're always going to have things that don't quite go to the plan and the vision that you set out when you go on a journey. But there is always that element of not allowing the immediate and kind of internal and maybe an emotional response to what's happened deter you from the fact that you said, no, actually, when I was a sound mind, I had this vision. I believed in this being a possibility, and I may need to adjust my strategy or my approach, but that doesn't, this setback, this challenge, this adversity does not change my fundamental and foundational belief that something that I've seen in a vision or as an idea is possible. So for me, I hold on to that as fundamental and true. And so that means whatever happens, I know, clear away the fog, the mess, the confusion, that thing is still there. And if you just keep going, you're going to get there eventually.
It's obvious that you say that through lived experience, and I know things such as a motorbike accident to crypto, and the ups and downs of crypto have played a part in that. And that's just to name, two parts of your life, which I'm aware of. And I reflect. I always do my best thinking in the shower, which I hope other people do too, so I'm not a weirdo. But what's interesting is, when you're in the shower, and I'll come onto the science maybe later on why we do our best thinking. But I was looking back today, and I was speaking to the producer, Niall, and I was saying to him, like, bro, you are where I was 7 years ago. And I wasn't like discrediting him. I was saying 7 years ago, I developed this obsession of I want to fulfill my maximum potential, right? Because with athletics, that's what we try to do. Like you said, with anime, you understand you have this capacity, you have this timeline. We don't know how long we're alive for. Let me maximize it. 7 years ago, I realized with entrepreneurship, I want to do the same. And of
Mm.
course, as we know, there's so many skills you have to acquire along that way. And there is no silver bullet as much as people hear it,
Yeah.
but you don't want to believe it. And the uncomfortable truth is, yeah, it took me 7 years and still to develop this skill set that I have today, where I am successful, where I
Mhm.
am happy. And I was saying to him, I will fail you if it takes you 7 years. So my question to you, Michael, is when do you think your superpower revealed itself? And how do you try to pass it on to others, if at all? So when
Hmm.
and how do you pass it on to other people, if at all?
I think it's always been something naturally in me. If I think back to like my really younger years, if I see pictures of me, and my parents always tell me that whatever I was on, I would focus on it until I completed it. And so there are some pictures of me like building blocks, and trying to make the most elaborate towers that I could possibly make. And every time it would fall or every time the shapes weren't quite right, I wouldn't stop. I would be obsessed. I would get in this zone and I would continue. But I was young, I didn't really realize that. And it came the same with one of my favorite pastimes, which was climbing trees. And if there was a tree that was too big that I couldn't climb, I would figure out a way to get up that tree. But that was just my natural, playful kind of disposition.
And if you don't mind me jumping in really quickly,
Hmm.
the tree, the big tree, it captured your attention for a reason. What was that reason?
Do you know what? I don't actually entirely know, other than I saw it as a challenge. But I
Mm,
remember that one of my favorite um, kind of memories of climbing trees is there was a scene in the film Jurassic Park. And there was a
okay.
scene, if anybody, the original, the first Jurassic Park film, where they're in a tree and a car is about to fall, and they have to get down the tree really quickly before this car crushes them. And I remember just reenacting that scene. And bear in mind, I was probably no older than about 6 or 7 when I was
Yeah,
doing this.
yeah.
But I remember just climbing to the top of a tree was my biggest thing. And then I
Mhm.
thought, "Oh, how quickly can I get down? How can I swing from branch to branch and then jump and catch another branch?" And I kid you not, like I was 7 years old. I mean, I was in Ghana for a while where my parents are from, and that was
Yeah.
between the ages of 4 to 6. And I know gained a lot of my tree climbing skills when I was there. But I just remember just having this fascination of my imagination was wild, and I was really immersed in that. And then I would almost like time myself, see how quickly I could get down, and then do it again and again and
Mm,
again. But that was all for fun. I think when the time I really realized that it was a superpower, it wasn't actually by realizing it was a superpower. I think I first saw it as a necessity. And that was, ironically enough, my first ever athletics competition that was in more of a club setting. So beyond school, when I first joined my athletics club, I was 12 years old, and I remember my first race. I'll give you the short version, which was that I was a sprinter in the beginning, but because it was my first race, I didn't know the signal for a false start was two guns. So me being me, and I was already terrified. Like I was a 12-year-old that had not started growing really yet. So I was small. I was already terrified. I had these
yeah.
guys next to me with hair under their armpits and deep voices, and I'm thinking, what? Who am I racing? So out of fear, when the gun went, I was off. And then I got to the end almost in relief, thinking I'd won the race. I turned around, there was nobody there. And it was almost like, I think, a scene from an anime where there's a name for this kind of shot, but when everything just zooms in on you and everything like just full of gloom. And I was like, what's just happened? And I remember my coach at the time, who was the team manager, ran out to me, turned me away from the crowd, and was like, it was a false start, but don't worry. All you're going to do is go and do that again. And I said, no way, I'm done. I'm out of here. Athletics is clearly not for me. I'm out. And she was like, no, no, no. And I owe this woman a lot, Terry Steele.
Mm.
She then walked me down. And at that point, that's when I started to be cognizant of the crowd. And I could hear the laughing and I could hear and I was just like, no, I felt, if I was not already small, I felt small. But I remember then she did something for me at that time. And I've kept that with me forever. Is about halfway back up the 100-meter straight, which felt like literally the walk of shame. She said, just tie your shoelaces up. I looked down, I said, but they're done up. She's like, no, 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 tie your shoelaces up. She was just giving me time, giving me time.
Wow.
So I went back, I joined the race,
Yeah.
and this time I went, after the gun went, I said, no, 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 let me just make sure you lot are running too, because I ain't doing this again. But ultimately, I ended up winning the race again.
Wow.
And so this that was the birth of my athletics career, because
Yeah.
from the kind of the sniggering and the kind of laughing, and I admit it probably was funny seeing this little kid scared out of his brains tearing down the track. But then I came back and won again, and that boosted me straight away. I went straight into the national papers and things like that. It was a big deal because all of a sudden there was this crowd that was suddenly so behind me and wanted to know who I was and whatnot. But then I think I realized from then, okay, this game is not going to be easy, and maybe even this life is not going to be easy for me. But if I just remember what happened in that race, I'm never going to be scared to go back to a start line, whether it's a
Mm.
psychological start line, a financial start line. I am never going to be afraid to go back to that start line again.
Yeah.
And so for me, I guess how I pass that on is I tell people that story. I tell people about my life because my life has been full of these moments where I've had to remember that 12-year-old boy. But in every single situation, now I've got to a point where somebody asks me how I keep doing this. And I say, because I remember it's what I've always done. It's just
Man,
simple.
and I think the reason why I'm having so much fun right now, and it's resonating because you were one of my mentors in the game, right? And that's not a secret. Maybe it was to many people, but I was a triple jumper as well. In a different class, I was national level, European. Michael was the European standard, right? So I understand as well with athletics, with sports, I'm sure anyone can as well, that when you get injured, that's probably the most relatable example of going back to zero.
Mm.
Because for that period of time, you can barely walk in most cases, let alone do what you are excellent and loved and adored by. So in that period of time, if someone said, hey, jump 16 meters or I kill you,
Mm.
you're kryptonite. You are a shell of a man in that moment. And so as an athlete, we go through those moments, fractions of our lives. Of course, they feel so long and big, where we are back to zero,
Yeah.
where we are learning to walk again. In
Mm.
your case, I know you actually have been there a number of times.
Too many
And
times.
too many times. And so when we come to the financial markets and we put our investor hats on for a second, and we realize it's just numbers, right? It's number one. And I think you'll like this saying. It comes from a well-known trader called Anton Kirill, quite an old school Goldman Sachs trader who now has an academy. And he said that there's $100 bill on the table right now. How do you feel about that $100 bill? And that person was like, oh, I feel good. What does that $100 bill mean to you? Oh, I can buy a handbag for my partner. Okay, cool. Here's 10,000. Now, what does that mean to you? Oh, I really love £10,000. Cool. What does that mean to you now? That's a deposit. That's this, X, Y, Z. And then he took it all away and he put back the £100 and he said, so what does that £100 think of you? And he was like, what do you mean? He's like, that £100 I'm looking at you. What do you think that £100 thinks of you? And he's like, nothing. Exactly. Money doesn't care about you.
Yeah.
And that £100 note means nothing in another country, e.g., America, because they don't accept it. And so this concept in investing, when we can realize that it is just numbers, that we all had to start from zero somewhere point in time. And the hardest thing, of course, is when you go so long without being at zero, you forget what it was like to be a beginner. And bringing on my geekiness, I think it's called the learning fallacy. We forget what it was like to not know.
Yeah.
And one thing I do to keep me persistent, Michael, is I try to go to zero every month. And what I mean by that, not my portfolio. Everyone's like, I'm going to stop watching this now. That would be impressive to a degree. Wouldn't advise it for your health, but every month I try and get my bank account down to zero. I normally accomplish to go into my overdraft quite well. But the reason why is because what happens is it keeps me hungry. And when I say zero, it's not like it's completely gone, but it's not accessible to me, meaning it's difficult. I've put it into a crypto asset, which is going to take me maybe 10 minutes to get it back into my account. And it's just that 10 minutes of friction is not worth it. So I'm forced to stay hungry like I don't have anything. For you, Michael, how do you stop yourself from being complacent and remain so persistent when it comes to investing?
To be honest, I think this started for me back when I was in uni. And I remember just even going to uni, how everybody always talks about the hardships of finance when you go to university. I bought my first motorbike in my first year of university. So I was already in, and that's probably another thing. I love to bend a rule. One of my favorite movies is The Matrix, and I love that quote is about rules that some can be bent and some can be broken. And I've always looked at myself as being somebody who can do more than what the general consensus or the status quo says.
Yeah.
So I remember back in uni, I said, no, but I don't accept that. I don't want it. And then of course, when you're in that world and you're seeing people talk about student debt and graduate jobs and all these things, and I said, do you know what? I see way too many people stressed out by money. I don't ever want to be in a position where money causes me that much stress. And so I said, I came to a place quite early on where I said, I'm very comfortable having little and a lot because I deal with it the same way. I live within my means, and whether that means I can stretch or that means I can't, very comfortable. I always used to say the worst thing that can happen to me is I go to the shops, I've got my basket full, I go to put in my card and I put in my PIN and it says balance insufficient. And I'll say, okay, take out my card, bye. That's it. That's all that's going to happen. I know I'm going to have something. I'm never going to have absolutely nothing. So I think I got very comfortable, similar to you, with the fact that not having doesn't necessarily mean the end. It doesn't mean you don't have anything. And so when I got um, into one of my kind of first attempts at a normal job in a period where I was injured, it was the first time I was introduced to stocks. And when I was introduced to stocks, that was another thing that told me, okay, well, if I have the option to not even see the money before it's gone, I never miss it. And that just taught me the art of, and as I started to do that, I started to understand the concept of compounding. I started to understand the benefits of saving more and more and adding little bits every month. And so that was quite early on in my investing career where I started to realize, this stock game that people talk about, it's the first time that I realized it was almost at the time I thought, and I remember saying to people, it's the one thing that we have access to that usually your amount of money that you have limits your access to making more money. Except in the stocks market, it's a percentage. Whether you have a million or £10, if a stock goes up by a percentage, you will get that. Now, in my more kind of mature years, I know that's not necessarily exactly the case with everyone, but the basic principle still stands.
Yeah.
And so when I understood that, I said, then this is an accessible game. And then I started saying, well, then I can put more and more into this. I can increase my tolerance for risk. I started to transfer some of my superpowers that I use in athletics to persevere, and said, all right, I'm going to start building this portfolio. And as I got comfortable and I understood, I started to spread my wings a little bit and got some losses quite early on in my life. So I said, okay, I know what that feels like now, money gone. But at the same time, it was like, okay, cool, but I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm growing. And ultimately the portfolio was also building. And so
Mm,
for me, that's where I started to realize that this same kind of principle that I had, my tolerance and risk for appetite, and actually a little bit of a desire for risk and appetite, I'm an adrenaline junkie, just meant that it exposed me to a whole new world that had another set of limitless possibilities.
mm. And that's regardless if it still holds true today, that's what got you in. And for that ideology alone, hey, it did its job. It got Michael in. Similar to me, right? And I'm sure there's a lot of people can relate to this story with crypto, especially, which was countless times in the first year of my crypto journey. TV there, charts here. 5-minute chart, 15-minute chart. It's up 5%. Oh my god, it's gonna happen. My 1,000 XRP. If XRP goes to 4,000, then I'll have 400,000, right?
Oh yeah.
And so many times this would take place
Mm,
that I began to realize, and I look back now and I think, oh, how naive and how silly. But no,
mm,
because the things that get me excited now, e.g., watching a 20-minute video from Kevin Cage talking about Casper's network and all the ins and outs of its investors and how many employees it's got, that would have never spoken to Jordan 3 years ago.
absolutely.
I wasn't ready for that information. Jordan did need hopium. And I think all of us need, well, look, at the end of the day, we all buy on emotion and
Mm,
then we rationalize with logic. I bought in with emotion just like you did. And now you and I sit here years into our journey, which we both know is still early,
mm.
and we are more logical than we were a couple of years ago. Would you say that's a fair observation in your world, Michael?
Oh, absolutely. But I think I'll be honest, because before, in terms of my journey into crypto, instead of watching the TV and having charts, I was watching you and having the charts. Like, and this is where the role reversal for us started to change, where you became my mentor. A little bit like I feel bad because I didn't actually ask your permission. I just started saying, "Hey, Jordan Harry, I'm going to start paying attention to what he's talking about." And that was literally just based on the conversations we had in athletics. And I said, "Oh, this guy switched on." And then seeing how you were applying that to sharing knowledge very openly, very with so much humility, but also kind of transparency around stocks. So then when you started to move into the crypto space, I said, well, that's a set of coattails that I want to hold on to, because where everything you were talking about to do with stocks, I was like, I understand stocks now. I've been in stocks for 7, nearly 8 years by that time. And so seeing you apply that same kind of logic, that same kind of due diligence, and the virtuous nature of how you were presenting crypto, said, okay, now is my time to start learning this. This is where I feel comfortable learning. Whereas before, I understood crypto, but not enough for me to start investing. Not enough for me to say, cool, then I understand that if I see this piece of news or this kind of release about a company or something like that happening in the world, I understand what that might do to some of my crypto assets. And until I got to that point of understanding, I said, well, this isn't right for me to invest. Now, the other thing is, I would say that I probably still am quite guilty of being a bit of an emotional investor, because my weakness, even though we haven't come onto that yet, is
Wait, let me bring the card up. Hey,
ah,
Michael, what's your week?
my weakness is relentless optimism. Because of my ability to see potential, I always like to look at the positive potential in things.
Interesting. And that's your weakness. So I want everyone just to pause for a second. Relentless optimism is your weakness.
And I say that because it turns me into, I guess, the probably the most relatable is the hopeless romantic, right? I believe in this kind of fairy tale and love at first sight type. Oh, I that was the first crypto I invested in. It ended up being the best crypto, or that was the stock I invested in. And I always think that, okay, whatever got me to think that's the crypto that I'm going to press the green button on, it's going to work. But that, as you know, and as you've taught me so many times, just doesn't work, because as you gave in that kind of story, the money doesn't care about you. The money is not moved by you and how much you believe in the money. It doesn't have that ability to grow by how much you believe in it. So I think that's still my weakness in life, actually. But I say it's a weakness only because of the potential for disappointment.
Yeah, and I think to do you a little bit more justice, in moderation, right? It can very quickly become a weakness if you let it run away from you, right? If you know how to bring that in and tame it, then it can very easily. We could have switched this around. That could have been a superpower.
Right.
I just wanted to add as well, Michael, that thank you, by the way, for giving me my flowers that I got you in. But of course, you're staying now off through your own research, which is I had the opportunity to speak with Jed McCaleb, founder
Mm.
of XRP and XLM, which now have grown to create their own ecosystems, Ripple, Stellar, respectively. And I asked him a question. As you know, I love asking questions. And I said to him, I've got one question. How the hell am I going to do this? So, Jed, what was one thing you thought was true, but you now know that is a lie in investing, right? This man's created 7 to 9 very successful tech companies.
Mm.
And he said to me,
It's a great question, by the way.
thank you. He said, great question. I was like, thank you. Thank you. So here's his answer, everyone. Kept you on a little cliffhanger. So Jen McCaleb said to me, Jordan, I was too optimistic. I thought everything I touched was going to win. I thought everything I built, everything I put my name to, if I willed it, if I put my mind to it, it was going to do X. And he now sits here, probably over a decade into his investing journey, and he realizes and now is a lot more pessimistic. And that is his advice now. And for many people, they're like, how can you be pessimistic but then invest in the new technology, right? Michael, have a stab at that. How do you think someone can be pessimistic about an opportunity, but at the same time have belief? Is it possible?
Oh, absolutely. I think I think just the same way we spoke about optimism as being able to be a weakness, I think pessimism has got the ability to protect you. and to kind of act as something of a um I almost look at it as like an amber light on your dashboard. Not necessarily saying there's something wrong, but it's saying caution, right?
Yes.
Because there could be danger here. And as long as you're alert to the possibilities of danger, you can always stay safe, even if there really is danger. And I think now I'm gonna butcher this quote, but it was something by Berkshire. And he said something along the lines of
Give it a go, and I might be able to refine it.
it was something along the lines of be something along the lines of be brave when others are being
Be greedy when others
greedy.
are fearful,
Yeah,
and be fearful when others are greedy.
that's it. And that's the quote that got me really excelling in my the building of my portfolio, because I understood that almost instantly.
Mm,
And that's something that I would say is to me quite similar to that quote about pessimism, because nobody would think about being fearful as being a good thing, but it can protect you. That sense of not feeling like you're invincible is
yeah.
very, very sobering, especially when you see assets disappearing, money going down, those charts, those candles, and everything else. But I think that's the kind of safety mechanism that we don't have, because we don't actually have a physical attachment to these things. And it is just almost an emotional attachment, because we see it and we're either happy that it's going up or we're not happy that it's going down. So I think that kind of um, just brings some humility to the whole process.
And I think that humility will come in two ways. It will be forced upon you, as we've seen with FTX, right? Many smart money. I saw a great tweet today, which was, "I'm not following smart money no more. They don't know what the fuck they're doing." and we say that loosely, but the reality was, and I was a believer, and that was my main motto, which was, "Hey everyone, look, this hedge fund, this fund have put their money here. They
Mm,
have billions of dollars and they've put millions into this project. You must put your thousands there because they're smarter than us, because they've made these much numbers, and therefore we've just got to follow them and we'll have the same results." Well, that would be the truth, right? You would have the same results if you left your assets on FTX. My heart goes out to every single person that did, because I didn't see it coming. I just purely didn't go on FTX because thankfully I was so proactive with all my exchanges that when FTX came on my radar, I was like, they don't offer me anything that the 10 exchanges I need. It was an element of luck that
mm.
it wasn't Kraken, it wasn't Binance at this moment of recording, right, on the 15th of November, right? Middle of November. And so the point I'm trying to make here is investing, whether it be crypto, stocks, real estate, precious metals. I'm going to take out that category actually, because precious metals is actually probably the most predictable market over the centuries, but not the most exciting. Which is, one way or another, you will be humbled when you start investing, whether that's through force because of market conditions outside of your privy, or whether you have conversations like this that you check your ego, regardless of how much success you have had or yet to have. You ain't shit. And there's someone with more money than you, there's someone with less money than you, someone with a bigger house, bigger car, bigger portfolio.
Yeah.
And I, funny enough, today in the shower, I literally sat there and I was like, if the space takes off today, I'm happy. I don't know when that happened, but I just sat there today and I was like, my portfolio, still I'm accumulating. I was like, no, I'm now actually content if
Mm.
it's all said and done. Right. And that's even with my pessimistic expectations of where prices go. Right.
Yeah.
So on that little tangent, Michael, anything you wanted to add?
To be honest, I think there's two things. Number one, you never actually gave us the scientific explanation about the shower, so I'm still
Oh,
waiting for
okay.
that.
Well,
But the other thing I think is I know I remember my first humbling moment, and actually I think you spoke about an element of luck there, and I think I was lucky in my first humbling moment, and that's when the first kind of big portfolio that I started to build was a portfolio in Apple stock. And I actually got to a point where I I thought, oh, this is great. Like this has worked. My first real investment has kind of taken off. So
Mm,
I did the stupid thing and I took out a lot of that money and said, right, I'm going to use this for something else. I'm going to invest it here. I'm going to invest it there.
hey,
And so it was double fold. The money that I took out to invest was all with the right intentions. And I said, well, this is almost free money. I have no problems investing it. And my appetite for risk was now even
true.
higher.
Yeah.
That investment effectively was a rug pull before I knew what rug pulls were. And then to compound that, no more than I think 2 years later, maybe less than that. I think I'm telling myself it was 2 years just to make me feel better. But I think it's probably more close to a year later. Apple did a stock split and the price went up. And I realized the amount that my stock would have been worth if I just
I
left it.
know. Woulda, coulda, shoulda. But
And
life
that
gets in the way, man.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's just that now I look back and I say, well, it was a stupid decision to make that, to pull it out, to make that investment anyway. I just didn't know. It
Of
was
course you
still
do.
early on. And so I'm grateful that that was my humbling moment, as opposed to, like you said, so my soul reaches out to everybody else that's been through much bigger hardships in recent times because of the volatility. But for me, that happened so early on that I think I've mitigated some of that in
Good.
later on. I'd say I haven't had losses because I definitely still have, but
Yeah.
I've been much more like you, pessimistic and much more protective of
Yeah.
the longer term strategy that I have to build more. Not quite where you are yet in terms of being happy with my portfolio, but I now just have that as a mission to say, look, as whatever I do, whatever kind of tangents I take with my investment strategy, I'm still got that perseverance to say, no, there is a level I want to get to before I start getting too comfortable.
That's refreshing to hear, man. And please let me know when you're happy with your portfolio. I promise you, it's not when you hit 10,000 XRP, because then you'll be like, oh, well, 20 sounds good. And then 20 is like nearly half of 50,000. So I might as well go 50,000. So, Mike, I know exactly the emotions you're going to go through. But I can tell you, it feels great when you get there. But then again, your mind goes elsewhere. I'm starting to invest in businesses, and it will never stop. It's a process. Um, and to answer your question on the shower, why is it that you get your best ideas in the shower? It's because your mind gets into a diffused mode of thinking. You have focused modes of thinking are when you are actively working on a problem. Diffused is when you've moved away from the problem, but
Mm,
your subconscious mind is still trying to solve it, right? And we'll all find this, right? You'll have your best ideas in the car, making a cup of tea, or in the shower, or coffee if you're in America. So the reason why is the water on your skin is a low-level distraction where your conscious mind is thinking about the water on your skin, allowing your subconscious mind to break apart and problem solve the challenges it's faced during that day.
mm,
And that's why so often you'll have an aha, I should have said that in that argument. Oh, I need to try that. I need to write it down. It's because it's not an accident. And in fact, you should be encouraged to get yourself into diffused modes of thinking more often. So once you know how your brain works, which is my past life, although it's all automated, ways to teach speed reading and memory training, once you know how your brain works, you can learn anything faster. So
mm.
there's your answer for you, Michael.
I
Take
love
more
that.
showers.
That
Take more
sounds like a
showers.
different kind
Make
of
more money.
feedback, Jordan. What are you trying to say?
Oh, you want to make more money? Financial advice. Take more showers.
More showers. I love
Come
it.
on.
I
Try
love
and
it.
sue me, anyone. How? Try and sue me on that advice. Oh no, it's on record now.
You know what? Yeah, someone. This is the kind of thing that's going to come back on you in 25 years or
I
so.
know.
Someone's going to be like, "I've got an idea. I'm going to sue Jordan Harry
That's
because
right.
he said this and he challenged me to sue him." Great. That'll be
And then give
that's
you a timeline. So keep taking those showers, and eventually that money will come.
eventually. Yeah. That's no, I love that advice. I
Oh, Mike. Like I said to you at the beginning of this, I knew this couldn't have gone on longer, and I wish it could. But I say to most of my guests that I have fun most that hey, you got to come back on the show. Is that a yes or no?
Oh, absolutely. I don't think we
Yeah,
even scratched the surface of some of the conversations. Probably more my fault, but yeah, no, I'd love to. It's been a blast.
love that, man. And likewise, I feel like one of the most luckiest guys on the planet. That this is my passion project.
Mm.
Maybe in the future, we'll take a sponsor so I can fund my producer. So it's not out of my pocket. But until then, Mike, I always love giving the guests this opportunity. If there's one last thing you'd love someone watching right now to remember, whether that be in athletics, investing, or being a visionary, what would that be?
Do you know what? I think the one thing that I would say, and there's probably a lot of one things I've probably said in my time, but I think ultimately it comes down to trust yourself. Trust that inner voice that is leaning you towards something. Everybody's got that voice that has told them for a long time that they want to do something. And that might be investing, that might be going into entrepreneurship, that might be just telling someone this crazy idea that you've had. But I think that the biggest encouragement I can give is that voice is there for a reason. And everybody's got a different voice, and everybody's got that voice telling them something slightly different. But what you need to know that that voice comes from a place within you that will never go away. And it's not going to go away for a reason. The voice might get a little bit quieter, especially if you don't listen to it because it gets fed up of not being listened to, but it will always be telling you something similar, if not the same thing. And I think that's where I've got into my kind of phase of this transition, going into entrepreneurship and really exploring myself as a visionary. I just listened to that voice, and it's brought me nothing but happiness, joy, fulfillment in a way that nothing else can, because nothing else is being led by that voice inside.
Beautiful. Wow, Michael. It was hard for me to listen to you because I started to listen to that voice in my head of, yeah, why am I not? You know what? Everyone meditate on that. Meditate on everything Michael just said. So, Michael, thank you so much for everything you've been through, yet to go through. I definitely value, and of course, everyone at home, I hope you are 1% better after watching this. If you're not, you're just going to have to come back next week to learn something else.
And thank you.
Michael, it's been a pleasure, sir.
Likewise, thank you for everything you do. The platforms that you are building right now, you are touching so many lives in different ways, ways that you will never know, the same ways you touch mine. So thank you. And on behalf of everybody that's ever enjoyed this show, thank you.
Ah, bless you, Michael. Honestly, you see this stupid grin on my face. Hey, you're more than welcome, although
Right.
it's a bit crude because we got a lot more work to do.
Oh, yeah,
But up till now, I'm appreciative.
likewise. Thank you, sir.